So shalom uvracha. I hope everyone's keeping well. There'll be some people coming in during the shir. I'm running a bit late. It's okay. That's all right. It's Jewish Mean Time. GMT, Jewish Mean Time. And also a massive welcome to all the people joining us on Zoom. Just ask that they please turn themselves to silent. Otherwise, it can interrupt the shir. On third meal on Shabbat, we started to speak a little bit about kashrut, about kashering the vessels on Pesach, getting ready for Pesach. And somebody asked me if I would prepare a shir, a more generalized shir about things I spoke about, to present some ideas. One of the things about Pesach is that it's a time when you know that it's coming and you start cleaning the house and you start getting everything ready. But we do need a little bit of inspiration as to what we're doing. We need a little bit of spiritual energy to get going. And so I prepared some collection of different ramazim, different drashot about the subject of kalim to present over. Some of these are Kabbalistic ideas, some of them are Hasidic ideas, some of them are just more ramazim that I've kind of thought about over the years. So we know that the Kabbalah spends a great deal of energy speaking about vessels and about lights. And Pesach is a time when we become immediately concerned with our vessels in the kitchen. Going a little bit out of order from the sheet, there are many different kosher standards in the world. And we know that one of the things that people argue about is kosher standards. People only buy this heksher, or they only eat meat from this person, or they only use this, or they only use that. And it's possible that people can fall into this trap of thinking that, my kitchen's more kosher than that kitchen, or their kitchen's more kosher than mine. And once a year, everybody's kitchen is treif. Yeah, everybody's kitchen is no good for Pesach, right? We have to kasher it. We have to get it ready. So everybody, so to speak, starts off on a base level. My kitchen right now, no matter what standard it's in, and the Rabbanit puts a lot of energy to make sure that it's good for everybody. No matter how good it is, it's not good for anybody for Pesach. Not right now anyway. There's chametz everywhere. The chametz, we mean the leavened foods we can't eat on Pesach. And our cupboards and our pots and pans are filled with chametz, and it's chametz everywhere. So even the most kosher home of the strictest person in the world right now, this week, it's no good. We're all starting off on a baseline of understanding that our kitchens need to be improved. And that's actually very profound, because it tends to be that people get very egotistical about this. They tend to think that only their way is the right way. And we start Pesach understanding that none of our kitchens are really good enough. And we can get started making them ready for the festival. And once we've kashered everything and flipped the kalim and we've done everything, then everyone, so to speak, is also starting at a base level as well. So everyone's starting again from fresh. Quite an amazing idea. When a vessel, we have our pot, our imaginary pot, comes into contact with non-kosher foods, depending on the ratios of the non-kosher things and what's being cooked, without getting into the mechanics and the science, the Kabbalistic and halakhic science of it right now, we understand that it can make the vessel treif. That means that the impure taste can be imparted to the vessel, and now that vessel is no good. We can't use that vessel. Now, of course, we know that there are ways to correct this, there's ways to fix this, there are certain things we can do to avoid this situation. And on an emotional level with ourselves, it's very much the same. We go through experiences that affect us in a positive way and a negative way. And the first step in a Torah journey, when someone's deciding that they want to be involved in Torah, is they decide that I'm going to take responsibility for my own actions and for the things that have affected me on an emotional level, on a spiritual level. And we start to try to arrange our lives in a Torah way that we can have positive experiences. And one of the things lots of people don't often think about is that the Torah is coming to guard us against positive experience, against certain experiences that might seem on the surface a lot of fun, might be very positive, but maybe long term it's going to be very detrimental to us. So we know that if we're doing something that's damaging our health, we know that from the Torah's perspective that's forbidden. Well, but it's great to smoke 30 cigars a day. It might be very enjoyable, but the long term effects of that are not going to be enjoyable. The decision to act in a certain way, in a particularly vulgar or brash or in a way that's overly enjoyable, overly hedonistic, might be really fun in the moment, but long term you'll have a life without meaning. And that's why Torah is all about taking ownership of our lives, building our lives in a positive way, and maximizing meaningful experiences. And that's why we fill our lives full of good things, hopefully. Full of Torah, full of mitzvot, full of family, full of community, full of tzedakah, full of helping people, hesed. You never feel, you know what, I wasted so much time going to the hospital to visit sick people. You don't feel that. You feel like, you know what, that was something I'm happy I did. When you organize something for poor people and you get food to them, you don't think, what a waste of time. You don't think that. You feel, wow, this is great, this is beautiful. Conversely, going to a casino for 3 hours and blowing a bunch of money, it might be very enjoyable in the moment, but then you have less money, you wasted your time, you were in a casino. There's no windows in a casino, you know that? There's no clocks and keep you there.
It's always nighttime.
It's always fun time until you lose all your money. Right? Now, what are we going to do during Pesach is we're going to correct the vessels. We're gonna correct the vessels. Now, how do we do that? So really, there's essentially two different ways that we do that. One is through fire and one is through water. Very basic teaching is that when we speak about heavens, we speak about Hashamayim. We know the Hashamayim is a combination of Aish, of fire, and of water, of Mayim. Two extremely, extremely powerful, please come in, very, very powerful elemental forces of water and fire. And throughout the Torah, we often speak about water and we often speak about fire. So much so that in a basic way, we know that fire refines, it purifies. If you want to extract something, you want to cook up your soup and you want to extract the taste from the vegetables, you need heat. You need to do that with heat. And in terms of water, so many of our sources deal with the purity of water. Water is used for washing. Water is a synonym, allegorically, for the Torah, as is fire. In fact, we call it Brit Eish, the covenant of fire. We mentioned today that if you rearrange Bereshit, the word Bereshit, you get Brit Eish, the covenant of fire. It's right there in the first word of the Torah. Brit Eish, the covenant of fire. For those who are just coming, please help yourself to coffee and cake. There'll be more people dropping in minutes. Now, heat in Hebrew. Anyone know how to say heat in Hebrew? Cham, right? Oh, it's cham hayom, right? Now, cham backwards spells moach, mind. The mind, the brain. Yeah. And a lot of what we're dealing with when it comes to our inner kashrut, we have to use our intelligence, our seichel, our incredibly gifted, God-gifted ability to look into the world and to analyze and to understand things, to work out where we're at and to perceive what we need in our lives. And when it comes to water, mayim, if you pronounce it slightly differently, you can get miyom. Miyom liyom, right? From day to day. So using our powerful ability to understand experiences and our wisdom, what's wisdom? It's what you gain from day-to-day life. Over the years, you see things differently. If you ask a married couple on the third day of their marriage, they know everything about marriage. You ask a couple who've been married 50 years, they've got what to teach you about marriage. They've been through it. Day to day, they've lived through it. These cross experiences. When we think about water, and specifically when it comes to koshering things, we think about boiling water. Now, water in this sense, when we speak about Noach, we speak about the waters of the flood. Amazing Rashi there brings this midrash that the water wasn't just flood water, it was hot water. The whole world became so filled with impurity that there was nothing left to do but to kasher the whole world with boiling water, do ibum on the whole world. And that's why the fish didn't survive. The whole question how the fish survived. Very, very interesting question there, without getting into that. And so we have these powers of correcting our vessels. Now, I'm not going to focus on this year about the different materials just yet, but we will get into a little bit of it. We know that when it comes to correcting the vessels, we need to know what kind of material we're dealing with, because different materials have different laws. Things made of bone, things made of wood, things made of metal. We'll get there. We as Jews have separate vessels. And that means we have vessels for meat and vessels for milk. And some people even have parva vessels, things that they use not for either. And in our times, we have vessels for Passover. There is very few families in Israel today who don't have a box filled with the Passover things. Now, for me personally, when I'm at my dad's house specifically, there's a special Seder plate that comes out, and we have that little box, like, at the top of the cupboard, Pesach, and it's like taped up, and there's the Pesach stuff in it. And this is pretty common. This is a pretty common occurrence. But that is because we live in a time of incredible affluence, where we don't really understand what it is to have pots and pans. Today, if my pot becomes not kosher, I've got a pot, and it becomes not kosher, it's a great temptation just to say, well, you know what, how much does it cost to buy a brand new stainless steel pot? Go to Landmark and buy myself a pot. Doesn't cost much money. It really doesn't. Today we live in a time of Chinese-made stainless steel pots. They're produced in a factory very quickly. In the time of the Shulchan Aruch, it wasn't like that. In order to have pots and pans, you needed a blacksmith. You needed to be able to smelt the ore and to get these things. They didn't have the ability to just give up on a pot because something happened in it. They needed the ability to kasher it, which brings it really to one of my central teachings that people know, is that I hate chad pami. I hate single-use plastics and single-use lifestyle and the single-use pans. And one of the reasons I hate it so much, other than the fact that it's bad for the environment and that you feel like you're at a kid's party every time you've got the single-use plastics out. By the way, you should know that they've had single-use material made from cornstarch since the 70s. We know a very, very intelligent, sweet man who lives in Kolkata, and he makes single-use plates out of banana leaf. They're beautiful. They're really beautiful things. They biodegrade in a few weeks. Meanwhile, the whole world is full of single-use plastic. Another favorite moment of mine in the world is you go to the supermarket, you buy your vegetables are in a plastic bag, you buy your rice in a plastic bag, your pasta's in a plastic bag. You go to the checkout, you're not allowed to have a plastic bag. Don't understand this. Okay. But we're living now in a disposable era. Friendships are disposable. There's no job for life anymore. Relationships, the way we treat each other, is understanding, well, I can just delete you on Facebook, I can block you, and then I don't even need to interact with you. You're not even part of my reality anymore. Easy peasy. Right? Just throw the pot away, it became not kosher. Right? And we lose the whole sense of something very grand and profound, which is that the pot can be kashered. The situation can be corrected. The marriage can be saved. The friendship can be restored. And that's because people are living in this philosophy where, it doesn't matter, it's disposable. It's very unfortunate that people have developed this, and it's not true. And ultimately, according to the Torah, we believe that the vessels, even though they shattered, they can be corrected. We believe very strongly that the world can be corrected. I mean, okay, you know what? There's lots of sick people in the world. There's no point being a doctor and helping people. They're going to be sick anyway. There'll just be more sick people. Can you imagine if people felt that way, thought that way? There'd be no one studying medicine. So, light bulbs broken, electricity broken, never mind, we'll just leave that building to rot. No one thinks that way. You have a property, you invest in it, you want it to work properly, you put your time and energy into it. You don't just throw the house away or buy a new one. No one. When it comes to precious things, no one feels that way. When you have a beautiful diamond, no good, it's a bit dirty, I'll throw it away again. So it's only of the things that we treat callously that we're prepared to see this way. And that's why We have many mechanisms that if we have a vessel that gets imparted with a non-kosher taste because we decided against any judgment to boil up some pig juice in our pot for whatever reason, the pot can be saved. We can kasher it. We can either pour boiling water in it, heat it up with boiling water. We can heat it up till red hot if that's the way it was treifed, things like that. We can save it. Yes.
I have a question.
Please.
So we use disposable cups and plates,
Okay.
and the reason is to save energy from dishwashing.
Yeah.
Now that you're telling us about this,
I'm not making.
my question is this.
Yeah.
Is it a good thing to do or not?
So look, I'm not getting into whether it's a good thing to do or not, because ultimately there are certain moments that disposables can be very helpful. There are, for example, Baruch Hashem, we've got a bunch of kids. Sometimes having the paper plates makes life super easy, right? I'm not here to make judgments on people based on their choice of cutlery and crockery. But I think that in general, the fact that we are so used to single-use things, we go to Starbucks, we get our single-use, we just throw away, which also has a plastic lid, by the way. Don't tell anyone, but paper straw with a plastic lid. But this mindset of creating everything is disposable, especially when it comes to the higher, what you might call emotional understanding or Kabbalistic understanding, it's not helpful. Because we want to live in a world where the vessels are savable, where we don't give up on people. You say, oh, that guy, he's a no hope, that guy. We don't want to have that attitude when it comes to people. I heard a beautiful idea as it was shared to me. I'm pretty sure other people have seen this idea. Somebody asked this famous rabbi, they said, Rabbi, God created everything, right? He says, yeah, God created everything. Okay. Why did he create atheists? It's a great question, but this comes up, especially when you deal with university students. Why did God create atheists? So the Rebbe gave an answer. I forget which Rebbe it was specifically. He said, well, that's actually a good question. He says, when it comes to, things that are in my control, I'm a big believer. But when it comes to helping other people and doing things for other people, I have to suspend my belief and act like it's all dependent on me and I'm in control of the situation. I have to, so to speak, suspend my understanding that God's doing everything and say it's up to me. It's up to little me to go and fix that situation. There's a mitzvah before me. Someone's hurt. Someone needs help. And I'm going to ignore the whole situation that's going on in the world and God's presence. I'm going to run in there and act like everything's on my shoulders and that I have to deal with it. And that's what they come to teach. There's something very powerful in the understanding that God's created everything to learn from. When you're going out to help somebody, you can't rely on the fact that there's going to be a miracle that's going to help you. You've got to do the work. You've got to, of course, believe in what you're doing and from the right place. But you have to make the commitment to doing all the work yourself, even if it's not going to be miraculously given. The person giving the CPR is no longer thinking about whether or not the energy is coming from God. They're just trying to save that person. They have to act almost like an atheist in that moment because they're so focused on the fact that they are helping. This is something you can learn from everything. Let me just go on this. One of the things that it's very important when we understand the kashrut of vessels and kalim is that in the area of thoughts and of speech and in marital relations and in food, people are very, very easily led into forgetting Hashem and letting their animal instincts take over. I'm sure everybody has, and maybe they don't know anybody, I'm sure we don't know anybody like this, I'm sure people have seen that you have very, very refined people and the food comes out and they lose control and they start eating pouring it in. And sometimes you have a very, very nice person, but the way they speak about other people and the way they speak about themselves, the way they describe things or the language that they use can be very vulgar. They can forget that they're an elevated godly being and they end up doing a lot of damage in the world. Now the Torah wants us to take control. It wants us to be in control because if we're not in control, the classic image of this, that they just for fun that they do is they imagine a man and the horse is on his back and he's trying to run around the racetrack. It's funny if you think about it. But imagine if this body is the horse and my godly consciousness is the rider, then I have to be in control of the horse, not the other way around. You imagine you've got the horse standing, sitting on top of the man and he's trying to run around the track. It looks very silly. It's comical when you think about it that way, but when you see so many people caught up in very, very negative cycles and bad habits, you have to ask yourself, are you the rider or are you the horse? It's an important question. This brings us to the fact that when we're conscious about kosher cooking and our vessels, it's because we want to bring that God consciousness into the kitchen. We want to make sure that our vegetables are clean of insects. We want to make sure that our meats are free of any kind of cancer within certain parts of the animal. We want to make sure that we're preparing food fit for sons and daughters of the king. People don't go, oh, kashrus, oh, it's so restrictive. It's so restrictive. You have to understand that my people are sensitive. They have sensitive souls. These aren't just normal people I'm cooking for in my house. I'm cooking for Jews. So you, from the perspective that kashrus is all, you can't do this and you can't do that and things like that. Okay, fine, I understand. I understand where you're coming from. But in my house, where I'm preparing food for very spiritually sensitive people with a very specific diet, when you meet a boxer and he tells you he's on a specific diet, or there's somebody who's training for something, and they say, no, I can't eat that. I'm on a very, very specific diet. I'm training for something. You don't poo-poo it like it's nothing. You understand it. So if you're training for a spiritual life, you need a spiritual diet. All of the religious systems in the world understand that. Some religions are far stricter than Judaism when it comes to food. Obviously, I spent a lot of time in India, came across many different kinds of diets. And we have to develop our understanding of kashrut, not to be just this system of laws that we're not allowed to do things, but also to understand we're training. We're in the training process. What do you eat before the run, Abraham? What do you do?
It's a serious run.
Yeah, serious run. Carbohydrates, starches and things like that. Because you gotta have that long-term energy to run the marathon, right? You know what would happen if I ran a marathon? I'd be in McCarthy Med. You could pick me up there. I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could do it.
Used to eat sweet potatoes because they're a long burning.
Long burning thing.
Yeah. So before I boxed, I always ate a couple of sweet potatoes.
That's why before the show I drink a few cups of coffee. No, I'm just joking. Now I mentioned the role of the material. So metal vessels, they can withstand great heat, and that might, in some ways, according to certain sources, understand that there's an endurance within the power of Hashem. We know that He establishes generational curses if we do certain things. We know that He's able to give generational blessings. Up until this day, we're living in the blessing of Abraham. That's how far the endurance of Hashem goes up until today. And then we have other vessels, like, for example, earthenware vessels that we know are basically impossible to kasher. Today with glazed vessels, I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty in this particular shir, but very, very interesting. And then also we have glass. Now, glass for Sephardim is, we can use it for milk, we can use it for meat, we can use it for Pesach. It's fantastic. For Ashkenazim, you should ask a local Orthodox rabbi. And the glass reminds me of the laboratory equipment. When you go to a laboratory, people use glass. Why? Because the glass doesn't really have as we say, the elotam, it doesn't have a taste of itself. That's why we use glass and laboratory equipment. So the question is, what kind of material are you? These are just things that we are able to learn from. They're mashalim, so to speak, they're allegorical. If you don't know how you react, if you don't know what your nature is, if you don't know what you're drawn after and what your problems are, you've got no chance in Torah. That's why we begin in Bet, right? We have to begin in Aleph. We have to know who we are. We have to work out who we are. Ani, Aleph, right? Rearrange Ani, you get Ain. Everyone's trying to figure it out. No one's really sure who they are, but everyone kind of knows who they are. It's a bit of a dichotomy. And when you know who you are, then you understand, first of all, you understand what your strengths are. Me, for myself, I can speak openly. Creative thought, very good. Mathematics, my brother took all of those genes. He got the maths genes, I got the creative, artistic genes, very good. But also, as soon as we start to understand what our weaknesses are, we also understand what of our powerful potential greatness that we have. Some people are better at other things. People have a natural inclination towards certain things. And one of the things that we do with children, I'm sure speaking to all the Abbas and Imas, is that when we see a child who has a particular gift, What do we want to do? We want to instill within the child self-pride and an energy to discover that gift. You see a child who suddenly takes after the piano. They love playing the piano. So what you do, you get them a piano teacher. You buy them piano books. You buy a piano because you see that they have a certain energy towards that. And one of the great things and most beautiful things about children is that they surprise you. Their interests and what they're interested in. And children, they if you ask them what are you good at, they'll just tell you. With adults, it takes an hour to get an adult to say, oh, I think I'm good at this. But with a child, it's like, I'm the best at climbing, and they know what they are instinctively. And so this understanding of who we are and what our material is absolutely critical if you want to know where you want to grow. If you're the kind of person you know you have a problem with overeating, that's where you have to grow. If you're the kind of person you find it very hard to get out of bed, that's where you have to grow. It should be very, very obvious that the places that we struggle are the places that we have to grow in, and the places that we excel in are the places we have to put energy into. Unfortunately, we tend to spend a lot of time beating ourselves up for things that we're not, instead of focusing on the incredible things that we are. It's very, very difficult to get adults to snap out of this cycle. I would suggest that one of the reasons for that is because we live in a world where if we don't make a certain amount of money, or we don't have a certain car, or we don't have a certain house, or we don't have a certain look, or we don't have a certain bag, this keeping up with the Joneses mentality that we have basically means that we're all useless. You're driving down the car, you see a beautiful billboard of a shape of a person. I don't look like that. Neither do they. They're airbrushed and contoured and corrected via the computer. And so all of the people that we're seeing on the adverts, they don't look like us. So we end up feeling ugly. And we see these people, we think they're very successful, they're very dynamic, they're very smart, they're smarter than us. You didn't see them fail. You didn't see them crash and burn. The really big business people crashed a few companies before they made it. The big spiritual giants, they crashed. That's the secret of the Tanakh, is we don't have any perfect people. If you open the Tanakh, even our greatest heroes, David HaMelech, King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech, Abraham, they crashed. We're allowed to say that. We're allowed to investigate their lives and see that because our tzaddikim are people. They're real people. They're real human beings who went through things. Now, one of the things that we have to focus on during Pesach is that we start to deal with, as I mentioned in the beginning, a brand new Issur for the year, Chametz. Now, Chametz is symbolized in different Kabbalistic and different midrashic material as being a source of ego. What is chametz? What is this chametz? Is you have a normal paste, in comes the chametz, it starts to puff itself up, and that's what we like about chametz. That's why beautiful big challah and big breads are great. But it tends to puff itself up and make it seem more than it is. And human beings are experts at that. We're all experts at that. And from a universal perspective, a cosmic perspective, we're these tiny specks of nothing on a planet that's a tiny speck of nothing in a massive wide universe that's ruled over by a God that completely transcends all creation. And yet I like to think I'm very important. My decisions are very important. I don't know if you ever had like an argument. Have you ever had an argument with your kids about something that's completely trivial? Like, we're not eating peas today, or we're not eating our carrots today, right? And it's the most important argument in the world. I don't like eating carrots. I think, in terms of a celestial situation, whether we eat carrots or not is completely immaterial. And yet from our own perspectives, our jobs, our lives, our desires, our dreams, they're very big things. And so the human being is very easily drawn after this experience of grandeur. And we know that when it comes to Rashayim, to evil people, especially evil kings in the Tanakh, no level of grandeur is enough. King Achashverosh, we spoke about in the Purim party, we're not just going to have a party, we're going to have a state party. It's not just going to be one party, it's going to be a whole slew of parties, and it's not just going to be one level of party, we're going to have the whole, because nothing's ever enough. That's why, we meet people who have too much gashmiut, they have too much money, then suddenly nothing's enough. Then you need a mobile phone that's covered in diamonds for no reason. You need, Lamborghini is no good. I need a Lamborghini covered in gold. That house, that's just my spring house. You should see my summer house. I'm a very important speck of nothing in the universe. So the matzah, which is the opposite, it's a bread that's humble and meek, easily broken, very fragile. It brings us back to earth. It brings us back down to reality. That, by the way, I'm just a little human being. There's nothing. My life could be gone in a second. In 100 years, no one will ever know that. Maybe there's a photo of me somewhere, a book I leave behind. They'll pontificate who I was. Maybe there's a recorded lecture in 100 years' time. Who was this guy? They won't know. No one will be around in 100 years who knows me. It's a very powerful idea to understand that everything that we see around us, all of these ideas, all these feats of creation, they're all going to be gone. And some of the things that we really enjoy seeing, ancient paintings, pieces of music from the past, are things that have lasted for hundreds of years, and we have an appreciation for them. That's why antiques, we have an appreciation for them. Certain ideas have come from the beginning of history even to today, but people come and go. Who was Thomas Edison? What was he like? What was his favorite food? What was he like to sit and chat with? I have no idea. Very important person, but who he was as a person is gone. Some of his ideas, some of his writings, some of his inspiration lasts today. Was Mozart a good guy at a dinner party? I don't know. No idea. Gone. And if we think about even our great-grandparents, what were they like? I mean, just making it closer for us. Our great-grandparents, who were they? What were they like? What were their political beliefs? What were they about? Hard to know. Hard to know. So when we think about the lack of hametz, we start to realize that our lives are going to be over in the blink of an eye. And from our tradition, we know that nothing lasts except good deeds and kindness. We know that Torah, learning wisdom, doing acts of kindness, doing good things in the world, that is leolam. That lasts. Whether I like Nike sneakers or Adidas sneakers, not so important in 100 years' time. Really not. The fact that you decide to build a hospital, then you're going to have remembrance of you in 100 years' time. If you feed somebody and you keep them alive and they have children, that's yours. You help create that. That's why even someone gives a penny in tzedakah, it's okay. It adds up with all the other pennies and it goes and does something powerful. Then everyone's a partner in something good. You don't have to build the hospital, but you can give a donation. That's your brick in that hospital. You had enough money to donate a brick, okay. But without that brick, the hospital is not complete. That's the power of Torah, is that even we don't necessarily understand everything in the Torah. Okay, but I'm learning right now. I'm part of the building of the Mishkan right now. It's happening. And that's why we come collectively together. We understand that not everybody has the same strengths in a minyan, right? Some people are good at the Kriyat Torah. Some people are good at talking during Kaddish. Just joking, but everybody's there together with each other, supporting each other. And then we've got a day where everybody came, everybody prayed to God. Everybody was there to answer amen to this person who's suffering because their brother passed or something like that. They said amen to their bracha while they're channeling that energy into the Kaddish. We helped that person say Kaddish. We did something positive. We get to the Song of the Sea just before we get up. Everyone gives a little bit of tzedakah. Somebody gives 1,000 pesos, someone gives 100 pesos, someone gives 5 pesos. And at the end, I take all the money down. It ends up being food for people. It ends up being gifts for the poor. It ends up being the ability to make shirim and have cake and things like that. It ends up creating things. We have to realize that even when we're not necessarily doing a big thing, it's massive. There's a beautiful custom with children, especially on Friday before Shabbat, to give them coins to give to tzedakah. Little coin. What does my little coin do? My little coin makes me happy that I'm a giver to tzedakah. And then when I become bigger, I understand that tzedakah is first of all, we're obliged to give tzedakah. We can't decide that we don't give at least 10% of our income to tzedakah. But at the same time, I feel good about it. I want to give it because my parents cheered me on when I used to put a coin in the tzedakah box. And now I've got this warm feeling every time I hear the chingo chingo in a tzedakah box. I feel good about it. All of the major religions in the world, Islam calls it zakat. The Sikhs, famous for their charity, absolutely famous for their charity. Christians, we're in a country right now where a lot of the free hospitals, clinics, things like that, sponsored by the Catholic Church. Incredible things going on. So it's not just a Jewish understanding. Everyone understands that charity is essential. Everyone gets that. I hope. Okay. Now, sometimes we end up with a vessel that has some kind of imperfection or a crack or a chip within it, and then it becomes very difficult to cashier it. There are many instances like this. I'm not going to go necessarily all completely into the halacha of it, but let's just say then it could be that there's chametz in the crack. It could be many things, especially when we're being strict on Pesach. And what's the emotional, spiritual understanding of this is that some experiences and sins carry more potential for damage than others. And so thus some of them are going to be more difficult to correct than others. And that is not some kind of magical, spiritual, ephemeral thing. If you do something really stupid, yes, it's true, you might be able to, say a magic prayer and get forgiven by God. That's fine, but your life might be ruined. As you get older and your responsibilities become greater, your need not to make stupid decisions becomes greater. The sign of whether somebody is ready for marriage or not ready for marriage is, do they make stupid decisions or not? Especially you're going to be you're going to have children, you'll be looking after children, you're going to be looking after your wife or your husband, you're going to be in a senior position in a company, you're going to be running something that's important. If you're the kind of person who decides to wake up and drink a bottle of vodka and see how fast you can drive, it's not going to work out great. And that doesn't matter who gets forgiven in a cosmic sense. And that's one of the practical teachings of Judaism. Is it very good to talk about the sort of the infinite level of forgiveness and Yom Kippur and how these things and sacrifices, but we expect you not to go around smashing your vessels. And that's why I'm sure everybody's already worked this out. When we wake up in the morning, we say, Moda ani lefanecha, we first train ourselves to be very grateful that we're alive. Wow, I can see. I've got clothing. I can take a breath. I can hear. I have loved ones around me. Wow, I've got food. I'll make a blessing on that. Wow, a beautiful smell. I'll make a blessing on that. A beautiful sight. I'll make a blessing on that. So you better start appreciating it now. You might not always have it. You might not always have clothing to bless on. You might not always have food to bless on. You might not always have sight to bless on. As a little interesting halakhic aside, a blind person also makes the blessing on sight, because they can rely on other people to help them and to see for them, to understand the depth of that, how profound that is, really. Now, for that reason, some things that people do may require more than just normal teshuvah, and the sources talk about that there are also things that we do that can involve painful tikkunim, illnesses, death of children, early expiration. These are things not just meant to scare us into being compliant. Things meant to make us wake up and realize that my actions carry a profound effect on the world. You know the classic one that my wife, who always teaches this idea, she says, how you are when no one around is who you really are. Now, I'm not just talking about whether you pick your nose and things like that. I'm not talking about that. I like the fact that a couple of people are smiling in the audience is quite funny. But how we behave. Do we behave like God is in the presence of God is with us when we're alone? Or is it just something that we put on? Is it an act that we do for other people? Like for example, I put on the tie and the coat and I'm the rabbi. Am I the rabbi at home when you're not around? How do I speak to my family? How do I act? You don't. In the next world, you're going to see anyway. It's all going to be revealed anyway. Better stop pretending now. It's all going to get revealed.
It's interesting to me that some arcs have over the top of it, know before whom you stand.
Yeah, that's a very
And so that insight, we don't carry it beyond that. Isn't that interesting?
Well, you have to know that you're standing before Him always. That's the idea.
Isn't that why the kippah? Right?
It's one of the reasons for the kippah. The kippah. Right. There are, different head coverings. It seems like over time it evolved from the turban, and obviously in Europe they have different styles of head covering. But the idea is the understanding that something's above you. It's not a specifically Jewish trait. It's not, but it is the idea that wearing a kippah is it makes one very humble. Certainly being identified as a Jew wherever you go, walking around, it's very humbling. As people see how you act. They judge all Jews based on what they see. It's very powerful. Now, not to focus on this painful tikkunim, illnesses, and even death, but it is important that we understand when we're coming to deal with chametz on Pesach, we're dealing with a karet issur. That means the Jewish soul can be cut off from its supernal source for willfully engaging in eating hummus. So something which, by the way, is completely normative throughout the year: cake, bread, cereals, noodles, pastas. Although pasta on Pesach, the whole question, not for now, but fascinating question for another time. That is actually something that we're obliged to eat. We have to eat bread. Shabbat, Yom Tov, we have Sudot, we have to eat. We're used to bread. So on Pesach, we have to treat something that we're used to, and actually is an obligation for us to provide for ourselves for meals, as a brand new Isur. So now the bread that we were eating last week, this week it will kill us. And one of the reasons for that, which I've mentioned in different contexts before, is that the human being has to break out of cycles, because people end up in cycles. We end up in cycles that we can't escape from. Sometimes these things are particularly negative. Sometimes they're not so bad. Depends what it is. But in the world of Hametz, all of my usual foods, all of my usual things that I would eat, all of my usual eatings, they're no good for me anymore. They're out. I can't have that right now. Now when I'm talking about Yetziat Mitzrayim and going out of Egypt and breaking free of all restrictions, all of a sudden the symbol for that is that bread becomes forbidden. And if anyone's ever thought about it, the symbol of Jewish freedom is more restrictions. That's how we celebrate our freedom. When you ask my imaginary friend here, what's freedom? Oh, it's the party and having a good time, and then, the fireworks, everyone's gonna have a drink, do this, do that, do whatever you want, that's freedom. Spring break. But when I ask a Jew what's freedom, more self-control, more responsibility, more ability to operate within the world of restriction. Because for me, it's not, because for me, my freedom isn't dependent on just feeling good. It has a higher purpose. And so for me, I can celebrate my freedom by adding a few extra restrictions for a week. No problem. But give me more. And that's why there's customs in Israel that make it even more serious during Pesach. People don't eat kitniot, they don't eat beans, and they don't eat this. Some certain Hasidic groups only eat things that can be peeled and things like that, based on Kabbalistic insights. There's an idea that these restrictions during Pesach, these additional restrictions, non-legal restrictions, have a certain beauty during Pesach. Because the Jew is expressing his freedom by the level of responsibility and restriction that he has. When you look at it from that perspective, it's very profound. Right, within boundaries. What's more freeing? To do whatever you want, or to have a happy, supportive married couple with a beautiful home where there's an environment? What actually provides more freedom? The guy who feels free drinking tequila and driving the motorbike. It's a certain kind of freedom. It is a freedom. It's a certain freedom, but it's an unrefined freedom. That's why the beauty of jazz, I'm really into my jazz. The beauty of jazz is that within a system, you can have incredible flexibility. Incredible flexibility. Within the world of music, which has certain rules, especially within Western music, don't like to say that music has rules, but within Western music, there are certain agreed upon paths through the scales and through the keys and through the modes and things like that. Not really rules, free to bend them here and there. But within that, there's a lot of scope. Something that I've mentioned maybe one too many times is that something that I discovered when I was first becoming involved in Torah is that I would go to a Beit Knesset where people were learning Torah, and I would have 100 people in front of me wearing the same kippah and the same beard and side locks and the same look and the same sit, and they have the same rabbi, and their homes look basically the same. There's like the nuclear family model with brothers and sisters and these extra people who they're sort of related to, and they daven in the same way out of the same prayer book, and they learn the same book, and they come to very, very different conclusions. They have very different personalities. It's not like robots. When you see people learning Talmud, they dress the same, but they don't necessarily agree. This one's holding like him, he's holding like that. We have big variances in Jewish law. everybody's tying their shoelaces the same way in the morning. How can it be that there's variance? It's because within the system of restriction, there's great movement. The really, really profound lawyers of the world, who are the kind that you need to get your checkbook out when you speak to them, even they know how to operate within that system of limitation and how to help you within that. If you don't know the rules of the game in law, you're in big trouble. The first rule with dealing with the police is
Don't say
anything, right? Because you don't know what the ramifications are. You need somebody who understands what the ramifications are. Within someone who knows how to operate within the system, great. If you don't know how to operate within the system, could be that it's not a good idea. If you ever decided to recode your computer, so you go to the DOS, you don't know anything about code, it's not a good idea.
No.
But somebody who knows what the code is, within the system that's restrictive, they can do incredible things. They can build brand new programs. They can achieve great things. Now, it makes sense to mention that the Jewish home is it's a Beit Mikdash Katan. It's a little temple. And we treat our homes as a sacred space. In the same way that in the temple there are certain ritual items, there are a certain way we treat the vessels and treat the things in the temple. So too in the Jewish home, the table that we eat our Shabbat meal is not just a table; it's a mizbeach. So it's our offering where we lift our breads upon, we make kiddush upon. It's not just when you're going shopping for stuff at IKEA as a Jew, you've got to make sure you got a good table. That's like number one. You're going to have a good table because we're going to be eating. We're going to be sitting for Suda. We've got to have a good table. We used to have a Rebbe in one of the yeshivot, and he said to me, "You know how you know you have a good table? You dance on it. If you can dance on it, it's a good table. It's a good table." That was his criteria for a good table. A bit of a Hasidic guy. It wasn't a small guy. But he said if you can dance on the table, it's a table worth buying. Don't buy a table that's you can't do. I'm not sure what my own personal advice is there, but in our homes that are small temples, how are we treating the members of the temple? Are we treating our family, our guests like strangers, or are we treating them like kohanim? This, by the way, this is very profound when you start to treat people around you like they're very, very big spiritual beings, particularly children. They respond very beautifully. Obviously, it's not a one-size-fits-all rule. There are more interesting children than others. If you come to my house, I'll happily introduce you to some of the more extreme versions of this. But the question is, when you walk into a home, are you being treated as a spiritual person? You're dealing with spiritual people, or you treat people like strangers? The classic one of this is that if somebody comes home in a bad mood from work, the effect on their house is immediate. And if somebody comes home and the first thing that happens was when they walk in the door, everyone's like, "Hey, it's you. We're so pleased to see you. It's you. You're here. We've waited all day to see you." And Dad's back from work. He's the hero. Or Mum's back from work. She's the hero. She's out there doing it. Changes everything about the way we, one of the things that breaks down with marriages very quickly is when couples fight and when they come home, they don't want to be there anymore. Because we've got this cold silence in the house. People aren't talking to each other. It's a horrible thing. When you come home and there's that big beaming smile from the kids, Daddy's home, they run up, they give you a hug. Nothing better in the world. You couldn't swap it for $1 million, that feeling. And so we have to realize we have to create an environment in our homes that in terms of our spiritual kalim, it fosters that. You know the classic one that I don't know if anyone's thought about this, is that this happens to me a lot, by the way, especially with one of my children. You're doing something very important, like filing your nails or looking at a cat video on YouTube or something. Not that I do that. And out runs the child with the, "Look, Daddy, I've drawn this for you. Look at this picture." And you're like, "Oh, spaghetti monster devouring itself in different colors," right? Picasso, eat your heart out. Wow, right? So most people, they make a bit of a fundamental error, and of course I do this. "Wow, what a great photo! Wow, look at that! Isn't that amazing? That's great." It's good. but the opportunity to bend over and whisper in that little ear, what is it? Tell me about it. It's you and mummy on a tractor. Why did you draw that? Oh, because the other day we were passing, I saw a tractor. You've got this opportunity to delve into the mind of this beautiful person, and he gets used to, that's a great spaghetti monster. That's great. Miss the whole point. Miss the whole point. Wife brings her husband a beautiful dish that she's been working on for hours. Honey, what do you think? Oh, it's great. Wow, even the smell is delicious. It tastes fantastic. You can taste the love and attention that went into it. I can tell you really worked hard on that. The classic one is you bring home flowers. Yeah, you ever done this? Bring home a wife flowers, right? She goes, nuts. Yeah, great. In 3 days, they're all going to be dead. But she appreciates that you took that moment out of your day to go on the way home. You didn't go to the pub. There's nothing wrong with going to the pub, But instead of going to the pub, you went to the florist and you picked out a nice bouquet and you brought it home for her just to say, I love you, Shabbat Shalom. I put that attention into my day about you. She doesn't see it as they're these, stalks of leaves that die. She doesn't see that. She sees it as a token of effort that you went out of your way to go get something nice for her. If you bring chocolates with it, all the better. Under the chuppah, a big Rebbe, a very big Rebbe, I'm not going to say which Rebbe, he said to me, if you want to have a happy marriage, you should keep lots of chocolate in the house and give it to your wife very often. That's what he said to me. Not just cheap chocolates, good chocolates. That was his advice.
His wife's thin?
His wife, I don't think, I don't know if she is necessarily your version of beauty, but I know that her home was just remarkably open. They used to have a massive table for Shabbat. She was a very happy person, very joyous person. And I'm sure other than the chocolates, there was a lot of other great things going on there. But he said to me under the chuppah, it's all about the chocolate. That's what he said. White chocolate, dark chocolate. That was his advice. You gotta take from everybody. Right? Take from
The proverb says that they who trust in Yahweh shall be made fat.
Yeah, but that's only Shemen. You should get bigger. I think those who trust in Ferrero Rocher, maybe they get bigger. Just joking.
Very fat.
Yeah, no, that's very good quality chocolate. Okay, and that brings us to one of the last points we make before the conclusion, which is that when we go into the world to correct it, we want to correct this world. We understand correctly what our purpose is, because we live in an extremely dark and difficult place, filled with poverty, disease, violence, with sadness, with great untold sadness. And we're here. We're stuck here in this garden that we know from our spiritual sources is through the result of human decisions. We took a beautiful garden, beautiful chance for a wonderful world full of incredible experiences, and due to human greed, human inability to push pause on our desires, turned it into a very dangerous place. One of the first things learn about children is, you can't cross the road. We've got to help you cross the road. We don't want you to go down this place. It could be dangerous. We don't want you to be involved in this kind of activity. It could lead you here. There are places in the world where they'll kill you for your shoes. And in this world that we've been put in the garden, so to speak, we're here to work and try to make it better. And so Pesach, we're learning about the fundamental Jewish contribution, which is we're going to make it better. Now, they might not fix all the problems. I can't do that. I'm not Hashem. I can't fix everything. But in this one area that I've decided to make better, today I'm going to make it better. And then we start to extrapolate that to our whole day. When I come to the minyan, I'm going to have a smile on. I don't feel like having a smile on. I feel like I need more coffee to get there, right? And like everybody else. But when I greet someone, when I walk down the street and I meet somebody and we connect eyes and I have a smile, that person has one more smile in their day. Now that person might not have had any smiles in their day. They might have had a day filled with self-doubt, with money issues, with health issues, with other people and their families' issues that they're dealing with. And my smile is one extra smile in the day. And it could be that little thing is the difference. And of course we extrapolate that to doing bigger projects, to helping people, to feeding people, to clothing people, to supporting people, to educating people. The idea is that we want to make this world better than the the place we found it in, with tikkun olam, to make it better. That's why I would say that one of the things that is unfortunate is that we've kind of developed this theology where half the people are praying for an apocalypse because they know that then they're going to be off the hook. Once the situation's so bad that I can say I can't do anything. That's people's secret prayer, is that the world end and then they don't have to do anything. They don't have to get out of bed anymore because the world's over. I can't do anything. Society collapsed. It's not my fault. Don't have to do anything. I think people were secretly praying for that a lot, especially during COVID. They were hoping the whole thing would go up in smoke. It's a secret desire of people to have a situation so bad that they have no responsibility to it. People, if they have a really, really bad situation in a relationship, they'll engineer it. That's the classic argument in a relationship. Is somebody has an argument, then they start acting in a way that's so perverse and crazy just to damage the relationship, because they know if they sabotage the relationship, they don't have to take responsibility. I've never done anything like that in my life. Just joking, of course. I think everyone's been guilty of that. The other side of the coin of that is the miraculous stamp of approval, where the abracadabra comes out of the sky and everything's better, everything's good. Great Hollywood ending. They ride off into the sunset together. It's lovely. Everything's good. Everything blossoms. It's extremely mature, because the Rambam writes in Perek 12 of the laws of the Messiah and wars there in his Mishnah Torah. He says, you should know that after Mashiach comes, it's all going to be the same. There'll still be what to do. Oh, you thought because in the older thing, you'd be off the hook of having to do stuff. No, didn't say that. There's no verse that remotely suggests that. The difference is that mankind will be one, and everybody will understand that there's a purpose. They'll be praying to the same God. It doesn't mean that there won't be poor and rich necessarily. It doesn't mean that there won't be things to do. There'll still be the need for hospitals and births and things like that. Still need to have doctors and things, midwives. See, we created a situation where either it's an apocalypse and therefore I'm off the hook of the responsibility, or everything's fine and I'm off the hook for the responsibility. I don't have to do anything. And the Torah's path is actually you're here to work. You're here to work. Even before Adam ate the fruit, it says he was made there to work the garden. Sages asked, what was his work there? His work was to guard the tree that no one ate it. That was his work. By the way, one job we gave him, he didn't do. Okay, interesting. But one of the things that Pesach comes to teach us, and I say this quite a lot, is if you decide, the day before Pesach, Erev Pesach, you say, I've decided I'm going to keep Pesach this year. You're in very big trouble. Because Pesach requires you to flip the kitchen and to fix the kalim and go get the matzahs and get all the... You can't just decide I think I'm going to keep Pesach this year. And it's an hour before, it's not that simple. Part of it is that we train ourselves in acting in a certain way towards a certain goal. That's why we know he who does not prepare for the Shabbat does not eat on the Shabbat. If you don't do any work to prepare for Shabbat, when it comes in, you can't cook. It's forbidden. So what are you going to eat? Canned tuna and crackers. By the way, everybody who's ever kept Shabbat in a hotel room knows this thing. You've got the crackers and the tuna. It's a disaster. But he who prepares for the Shabbat, who understands that the Shabbat is really a metaphor for the next world, in the next world, whatever it is, there isn't the ability to do things. Whatever we're building in this world is what we're taking with us. So if you're not going to build positive things, if you're not going to create wisdom, if you're not going to create happiness and put smiles on people's faces in this world, you're not going to do it there. There's nothing to do there. We have to prepare here to take it with us. And Shabbat is this training. And so too with Pesach. Pesach's a training as well. If you're not going to kasher the kalim, if you're not going to correct yourself and work on yourself in this world, then unfortunately, then you're not going to have that there either. That's all. My wife has this thing she says all the time. It really irritates me when she says it. It's definitely true. She says, if you take a plate and you drop the plate on the floor, then you say, I'm really sorry, plate. I'm sorry I dropped you. The plate doesn't just come back together again. It says, no problem. It doesn't do that. I don't know why the plate has a high-pitched voice in my mind. Maybe it's just the way my imagination works. But if we make a mistake, you can't just say, I'm sorry. The plate can't bring itself back together. There's a Japanese art. I don't want to dare try to pronounce it I'm certain I don't know Japanese, so I'm gonna get it wrong. And what they do is they take broken pieces of pottery and they fix it with gold. And they take these broken cups. Yeah, they kind of put gold into the crack and they put it back together. And then this plate that's was broken, is now corrected in a beautiful way. In fact, now it's worth more. There's a secret to understanding that the vessels can be fixed. It's true, if I say sorry to the plate, it doesn't help. They take the ceramics and then they bring it back together with gold in the crack, and then they set it somehow. I have no idea how this is done. It's something that I would not be good at. Sounds fiddly, and it's not something I would be good at. But they take a broken vessel and they correct it. They make it more beautiful. An incredible thing. We are in the habit of treating ourselves like animals, and how we think about ourselves and how we formulate our viewpoint about ourselves says a lot about how we're going out to treat other people. I have dealt with this in many different facets and formats, that when people wake up in the morning, they don't always see that bright, smiley, friendly creation of God in the mirror. Sometimes they see that guy who's no good, or that woman who's not skinny like she used to be, or she's this, or that. Her hair used to be like that, bags under the eyes because the baby doesn't sleep. People have a habit of seeing themselves like that, and then taking that self-view out into the world. And then everything is not good enough. Everything is full of criticism. Everything is bad. Didn't work on waking up with a smile and being happy with the person I am, creating positivity within myself, choosing to do the right thing. I ended up with, instead, a life of regrets and poor decisions. And now I'm going out in the world with that. And now the fact that guy looks like that, or that guy is doing that, that's not good enough either. And my children, they only got a B+ in science. It's not good enough. I only got this much money. It's not good enough. So I've only got this. No end to it. On Pesach, we flip the vessels. And that's why there's an incredible, profound spiritual teachings about Pesach. We start to read the Midrashim about the different incredible acts that God did. All of the acts of the Exodus, of going out of Egypt, there are all these incredible, miraculous things. Hail with fire inside them. Water turning to blood simultaneously. All these incredible things, are these contradictory states that God created just so that his name could be blessed, just so that he could be exalted. He flipped the vessels. Everyone knows what water is. It's not water anymore, it's blood. What? God says so. Okay, well, what about locusts? They're normally a favorite food in Egypt. Not anymore. These ones can't be eaten according to the Midrash. These ones can be eaten. Midrash says that when they first saw the locust swarm come, they celebrated. Wow, we're going hungry. Here are the locusts. These ones they couldn't eat. Sorry, doesn't work. These miracle in the wild beasts is that animals that were not normally paired up to coexisted for the sake of destroying the Egyptians. So you had bats flying in with the tigers, running with the bears, with the snakes. Achdut, symbol of achdut, of unity, but disorganized unity. Very powerful idea. Not only do we talk about freedom from slavery, but we really also have to finish with an idea that the person we need most freeing from is, of course, ourselves. We, so to speak, hold in our hands the ability to constrict our consciousness, to hold ourselves back from our goals. A lot of this is not our fault. A lot of this is things that we're coming through life picking up a lot of baggage upon. We don't want to be the people holding ourselves back from greatness. And this is, by the way, it seems egotistical. I can be great. Again, isn't this puffed up bread? You can be great in a humble way too. You can be like the matzah. The matzah is great. The matzah is great. We love matzah, right? I see a lot of faces smiling and nodding. There's a matzah, but we admit that our vessels have become filled with ego. We think we know a lot. We think we understand a lot. But all of our kitchens are filled with chametz. We're going to start again fresh. We're going to flip the vessels, and hopefully give ourselves, within the context of cleaning everything, the understanding that teshuvah, that repentance, isn't just this one-time event on Yom Kippur, or this thing that you do when you did something bad. That's what. But the problem with calling it, atonement and all these other English words is it's not teshuvah. Teshuvah doesn't mean that. Teshuvah means return to that idyllic state, return to who you really are. Teshuvah on Pesach means understanding that even if I've damaged my vessel, I can correct it. Even if I've said the wrong thing in an argument, maybe I can do something to make the relationship even stronger than it ever was before. Some things harder than others. Not all relationships can be so easily fixed. Not all mistakes can be so easily corrected. But on Pesach, I understand that the vessels can be corrected. There's an intrinsic ability to correct my situation. And even if my situation is not what I want it to be, it could be a little bit better. It is, so to speak, the equivalent of understanding that if I can make my life a little bit better, if I can be a little bit more refined, a little bit less brash, a little bit more calm, a little bit more sweet, a little bit more gentle, I've got a better world because I made it a better world. It's my world now. So I'm a co-creator in Hashem, because ultimately freedom, as we said, go back to this marshal and finish there. Freedom isn't the guy dancing up and down at the party can do whatever he wants. That's a certain kind of, it's a pretty immature kind of freedom. And then there's somebody who looks at the world with all of its issues and constrictions and problems, Mitzrayim, from tsar, from constriction, the word constriction, Mitzrayim, world full of constriction. I have to operate in this world? Okay. So now I'm going to operate in that world and I'm going to make it a better place. I'm going to go forward. I'm going to have blessing and success. And it should be that all of us, all of our families, should be having an incredible time in the lead up to Pesach, not just cleaning vessels, not just scrubbing the house and some kind of spring cleaning, but also understanding that it's the inner vessels that need to be changed, that need to be updated. The software update for the vessels is needed. And we should understand that, it's an ongoing process of cleansing, of bettering, and everyone should have an amazing lead up to Pesach filled with success, good health, wealth for them and their family, and for all Am Yisrael and for the whole world. Amen.